In 47 short days, Ohio State will kick off the season against Texas. So on the beat on a Monday, it's time for a matchup Monday. Let's talk about some actual football and maybe a little bit of more on Monday as well, because there's a reason that some of the intricacies of this showdown in the Horseshoe have had my attention. But I don't want to rant just every Monday about Paul Feinbaum and national media. So let's actually look at why I think that this matchup is being viewed unfairly. I don't know what the right word is, Birm, but I've been annoyed by it for a while, and I've mentioned it several times, but now let's actually get into what some of those details are on a Monday to kick off this week.
Yeah, but first, we have to wish a happy Bastille Day to all of our French viewers and listeners. It is a pivotal day in the history of France and the event that kicked off the French Revolution. So congrats. Welcome, French audience. We appreciate you being here. I know we have a large contingent of watchers in the south of France.
Fact check. That is false. I can see the analytics. We don't have any French viewers.
All right. Well, I'd like to have one. So if we can find one French viewer out there, welcome, bienvenue to Monday. Right? No, you're right. The reality is the Ohio State Texas game is coming up. It should be one of the best games of the year. But the way it's being perceived nationally, it appears if it's two programs that are like boats passing in the night, as opposed to that are basically the same. And Ohio State and Texas played a tooth and nail back and forth game in December that was one of the best football games of the 2024 season. They both suffered a lot of similar losses to the NFL, and they both have young offensive-minded head coaches in major thriving metropolises that are two of the country's most up-and-coming cities. There are a lot of similarities between these teams, and it's not just the programs, but it's when you actually look at the teams that are returning for Ohio State and Texas, there are a lot of things that make you go, this should be a classic game. And ultimately, the question is going to come down to, I think, what is more important than home field advantage. And, it sure would be nice if this game was at night and get the crowd a little sauced up. But I think Ohio State fans are going to come out and be ready to rock to celebrate the national championship and do so with the Longhorns in town. But we can dive into some of the particulars at your request, at your behest, Austin. But what is the single biggest remaining question about this game that you have as far as matchup? And obviously there's 47 days to go. Nobody started fall practice. Anything can happen. Rosters can still suffer, changes based on things that happen in fall camp. But where are you looking at this game and thinking that Ohio State has an edge?
I think as I started to look at some of these numbers, and I think because my irritation has been, well, only Ohio State has to replace all of these draft picks, all of these starters, a quarterback. Like, all these things also apply to Texas, and they played each other, 7 months ago at this point, and Ohio State won that game, and it was really competitive, as you said, and it came down to one spectacular play, Jack Sawyer with the scoop and score to put it away. We don't have to rehash all of that, but it felt like for the most part that Ohio State was the more physical team throughout that game. And of course, if I don't want to pretend like Texas should be scrutinized and Ohio State shouldn't, that Ohio State should have the benefit of the doubt. That's not the way I'm approaching this. I think that one team is being unfairly challenged in a way that is not being applied to Texas. And I do think it does come down primarily to the quarterback situation. But I just thought it was worth bringing up because we've got a number of questions. We've got a number of emails. What's that email that they could send it into, Birm?
It's the Austin and Birm Show at gmail.com.
Got a number of questions about that. It's like, why is only Ohio State being treated like they have to replace the world? And the matchup that, I thought really got my attention was Texas losing four starting offensive linemen. Yeah, Ohio State has to do that too. And I feel really comfortable about the way the Buckeyes are reloading and retooling that group. And I think that the floor is higher for that group than it's been in a decade. I made that point last week on the beat.
But I think you look at the offensive line, we'll just start there, right? Ohio State has Carson Hinsman returning. So you have the apex, you have the center. You have Tagovailoa returning. You have Austin Birm returning. Those are three starters essentially coming back for Ohio State. So Texas has one. I mean that there's a difference, right?
Yeah, and I think that's critical because we've spent in Columbus and on this show a ton of time talking about what Ohio State is going to do to replace Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, Tyleik Williams, and Ty Hamilton on the defensive line, and the pieces that are going to do that and what the potential can look like. It's somewhat advantageous for Ohio State that those guys are going to make their starting debuts. Most likely, in my opinion, Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson, Edric Houston, and Cade McDonald against a completely rebuilt and largely unproven Texas offensive line. Now, in an
environment that should be absolutely rocking.
It is going to be loud. Would it be louder at night? Probably. It's going to be loud no matter what. I think anytime there's a big game in the Horseshoe, Ohio State fans respond in kind or unkind to the visitors, however you want to view that. That's going to be a very difficult situation because they are also having to replace their starting quarterback. And yes, Arch has a very famous last name, and maybe he's going to go light the world on fire, but he's going to have to go into the Horseshoe against a Matt Patricia defense. And for whatever uncertainty we may have about the defensive line, there isn't really any question about everything in the back seven. The secondary is going to be the best in the country, best in America, perhaps some might even say. And the combination of Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese, I think, is, Texas may have a claim to this as well, but at least one of the top 2 or 3 most athletically gifted linebacking cores in the country, adding in Peyton Pierce into that mix. So yeah. I think the problem that I've had is not that I don't think Texas is good, not that Texas can't go back to the college football playoff, not that they can't be a semifinalist again, not that Arch Manning has some impossible task ahead of him that he can't become a draft pick at this time next year. Maybe all of those things are true. But if you go into game number 1 here, Ohio State is at home. The bettors and the odds makers favor Ohio State to win this game. The S&P plus, all of that, the returning production metrics are virtually identical for Ohio State and Texas, which does not seem to be the way that this matchup is viewed across the country at this particular point. And then PFF jumps off from the top rope with one more elbow drop that says, you know what, the number 1 team in the country right now, based on everything, grades, stats, numbers, everything that they put into it, is Ohio State. I get the thing that shifts the narrative here, like the numbers crunchers love Ohio State, and there's great reason for that. And then the opinion makers are somehow deciding that they would rather see, whether that's something new, whether it's just, doesn't get enough attention to roll with the reigning national champions and say that they're going to do it again, whether it is deference to football royalty and the quarterback legacy of the Manning name, maybe all of those things. I don't know. And maybe they don't even matter. Maybe I shouldn't be paying attention to it. I just feel like if we're going to be honest about what this matchup comes down to, like Texas needs Arch Manning to be really good, and he needs to have great protection from an offensive line that's being reworked. And this notion that only Ohio State has to find new starters is like completely erroneous. Yeah.
I mean, I think the issue for most people comes down to the quarterback play. I mean, we talked about that a number of times, but I want you to consider this stat line against Mississippi State from a year ago. 23 for 28, 285 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And tell me why it should be considered that Arch Manning's numbers against Mississippi State are that much better than Tucker Gleason's, because Tucker Gleason are the numbers that I just read off. And that was Toledo's starting quarterback against Mississippi State when Toledo went into Starkville and beat the Bulldogs 41-17. So Arch Manning started that game, went 26 of 31 for 325, 2 scores. They won 35-13. But Toledo beat Mississippi State by a bigger margin in Starkville than Texas did. But what you get out of Arch Manning last year is, I think, 90 attempts, pretty productive, 9 touchdowns, but he had 4 of them against UTSA in 12 throws in the second week of the season after Quinn Ewers got banged up. So like he put up some numbers early in the year that had people like, oh, look at this, he should be playing. He had one play in the Cotton Bowl against Ohio State. One that I'm sure his back is still remembering because he was properly introduced to Lathan Ransom and fumbled, even though they didn't call it a fumble on the field, although they should have, because it was clearly a fumble to anybody who has eyes. But it comes down to the quarterback play. Julian Sain is is a question mark for Ohio State because he hasn't played that much. And what if you want to give some credit to Steve Sarkisian, he was able to get Arch Manning some actual game reps last year that mattered. Some of that is because, again, Quinn Ewers had some health issues, and Arch did have to start a pair of games. But if you look at him in the games that mattered towards the end of the year, he was 3 of 6 for 19 yards against Georgia in a 30-15 loss. He was 3 of 6 for 19 yards against Florida. Basically the exact same stat line. It was not a guy that they turned to. And that's one of the offseason storylines that I think is people regularly, oh, well, if Arch is so good, how come he couldn't surpass a 7th round pick in Quinn Ewers, blah, blah, blah. Like nobody was going to, that's a silly statement. I mean, Will Howard was a 6th round pick. So it's not like Ohio State should have been replacing him with Julian Sayin during the season. So
it's also really hard to be an NFL draft pick.
Yeah. I mean, that also is something that people should consider. To me, like, again, if you're watching this on 10 TV Plus or on 97.1 The Fan YouTube channel or 10 TV's YouTube channel, you could see like both teams last year set a school record for a number of draft picks from their team in 1 year. Ohio State matched their previous high, but Texas had 12 guys drafted. Ohio State had 14 guys drafted. No returning starter on the defensive line for either team. Yes, Texas does have really good players coming back on defense like Malik Muhammad, like Anthony Hill in the middle at linebacker, Colin Simmons, maybe the best defensive end in the country, coming back as a sophomore, as a second-year guy. They have Trey Moore coming back. They have Trey Wisner coming back on offense. They've got some explosive pieces, but side note, so does Ohio State. So, and I think the one thing that is not going to be talked about enough here as far as the matchup goes, and I'm sure it will be in the next 7 weeks, is that we don't know what Ohio State's defense is going to look like. Texas is returning a lot of quality players on defense, and that's for sure. But the Buckeyes played them 10 months ago, and there's not a lot of things that have changed systematically or schematically for the Longhorns on defense. And we have no idea what Matt Patricia is going to cook up in this game. Like it's not a returning game for Jim Knowles where you know exactly what the defense is going to be as far as the structure of it goes. We really don't even know what the structure of the Ohio State defense is going to be. So I think this game shapes up better for Ohio State because it's the season opener and you have 10 months to plan for it, as opposed to it being week 3, like we've seen other marquee matchups with Ohio State in the last few years where you have to kind of adjust on the fly and people have some tape. I think that actually plays really well in Ohio State's favor.
And look, I don't think that it's off base for anyone to be skeptical about Ohio State's chances of defending. I made that point with the Paul Feinbaum comments a week ago, and I think that that's true now as well. I just don't understand why the same level of skepticism is not being applied to Texas. If it's just because you are 100% on board with Arch Manning, or you think that Steve Sarkisian is, I don't know, somehow more of a magician with his roster than Ryan Day, I don't know what you'd be basing that on, or in-game decisions or track record throughout the duration of his career. But if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. But like, it's okay for people to say, you know what, Ohio State has something to prove. Julian Sayin or Lincoln Kienholz have something to prove. That defensive line is not settled in a way that you feel comfortable with if you're analyzing the duration of the season. I just think if you're looking for this matchup in particular, which we all are now, 47 days away, I can't wait. We're a week away from Big Ten Media Days and getting to talk to people about actual football again. I'm just getting excited to see it. And I think that the fact that there are questions for both teams, which are both going to be in the college football playoff at the end of the year, in my opinion, is exciting. But to think that like only one of them has something in a bit of adversity to face with their roster is just so off base that I can't even believe it.
Yeah, and I've seen some projections that Texas may be starting a true freshman at right tackle, Brandon Baker, a guy that Ohio State recruited pretty aggressively in the class of 2025. Like, if that's true, boy, that sets up like a Christmas morning for Kenyatta Jackson and the Ohio State defensive line and the edge rushers. So that is something certainly worth paying attention to. I guess we will see. I mean, the reality is this game is going to be an absolute banger. It's going to be one of the best games of the year. I think right now, and we certainly don't advise anyone gamble in this on the show. We don't talk about gambling because
we do.
Austin does because he's a degenerate. I as the highbrow part of the show, I don't think people should waste their money on gambling and pursuits of such frivolity. But Ohio State is a 6-point favorite. The over-under is set at 51.5 right now. So 6 points in a college game, that just means home field advantage, basically, right? So it's a toss-up.
Home field advantage is worth a field goal.
I thought that was only in the NFL.
No, it's also in college football. It's not a full touchdown for that game. You can put whatever price you want on it, Birm. That's fine.
All I'm going to say is take the under. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think if there's a sure thing in this game, it's that both defenses are going to be really, really good. And that's exciting too, because whether it's Arch Manning or Julian Sain or Lincoln Kienholz, they're going to have to earn everything they get. And we're going to learn a lot about 2 or maybe all 3 of those quarterbacks in this game. That's pretty fun too. But again, we are within 7 weeks of that. That's exciting.
I think we're going to probably talk about that game more, right, in the next 7 weeks. But that's just a little teaser, because I think a little appetizer of saying, hey, let's not just assume that Ohio State is struggling to get ready for that game and Texas is primed and ready.
Yeah, they're not. Let's just be fair. That's what we want, Birm.
Yeah,
we want
fairdom.
Fair national coverage of college football, and that is what we're striving to achieve. There is some movement on the Ohio State support staff. Sam Petito, director of player personnel, left for a similar position at LSU heading into the weekend, and this makes 4 years in a row that this exact same position has been in transition for Ohio State. Sam Petito he spent 2 years here, right?
He was heading into his second year.
Yeah. Okay. So that was. Yeah, he did a good job, but this position has been like the dark arts teacher at Hogwarts. Like it's a 1-year spot, and then Ohio State goes and gets somebody new. And part of the reason here is that Sam Petito is returning. He's from Louisiana. It's a bit of a homecoming for him. It is also, Birm, a situation where this is not a particular staff spot where Ohio State is willing to break the bank. And as you look around some of the desperation that we've talked about in recruiting, and we'll also get to that, you've seen that with support staffs and recruiting staffs and player personnel spots where that is where resources are being spent by other programs. USC has done that as well. They're apparently spending money everywhere. LSU is doing this to try and get Brian Kelly over the hump. Ohio State, you can talk about Sam Petito's impact and what you think this loss might mean in a second, but I'm going to say that part of the reason, if you're worried about Ohio State losing these spots year over year, they've done a very good job replacing them with someone like Sam Petito here a year ago. And they have ramped up the spending on the on-field coaching staff. We're talking about Ohio State now having essentially 3 full-time offensive line coaches. That is where they've chosen to spend their money. And at some point, you do have to make a decision. You can't just spend it everywhere. Even if you have the largest operating budget in the country, as Ohio State does, or they're top 2 going back and forth with Texas, you don't have an unlimited amount of money to spend on every single spot on your coaching staff or your support staff every year. And they have made a conscious effort to spend it on the on-field side of the game.
Yeah, well, they also just tripled Mark Pantoni's salary within the last 2 months as well. But it's an interesting move. It's one of those things that feels like it was obviously going to happen at some point. LSU, Sam Petito is from Amite, Louisiana. He was basically hey, we need a guy last year, and this guy's available because Nick Saban retired. Sam Petito had worked for Nick Saban for nearly a decade. He's also been the player personnel director at Georgia. And he's a Southern guy. He's done a great job opening the door for Ohio State in Louisiana. It's paid off in this recruiting cycle. The Buckeyes have a commitment from the number 1 player in the state of Louisiana, Blaine Bradford. We'll see if that matters. I don't think you can unring the bell if you're, LSU is obviously going to hope that the relationship that the Petito name has with the Bradford family can help sway him. We saw LSU having some top recruits already this weekend hosting stuff to Blaine Bradford and come home, stay home, blah, blah, blah. We'll see if it matters. It does hurt because of the timing, as you mentioned. Here we are. It's July 13th as we record this. Ohio State losing a key staffer when you don't have a whole lot of time to replace them with a quality hire is interesting. But again, Ohio State is the brand that everyone in the country wants to be a part of. Interestingly enough, it seems like LSU is taking a page out of USC's book because they also hired away Kelvin Bolden from Ole Miss last week and Jeff Martin from USC. And if there's a guy I don't know if I would say he's a guaranteed first look or whatever for Ohio State, but USC, who stole a number of recruiting staffers away from different people this offseason, including Chad Bowden from Notre Dame and Max. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find. I want to make sure I pronounce his last name. I'm trying to find it right now. Max, I think it's Steinecker, but he was at Wisconsin as their director of player personnel, who actually worked in Cincinnati with Zach Grant, who was Ohio State's previous player personnel director. Max is someone that is from Ohio, and there had been discussion about him maybe being the player personnel choice before San Petito became available last year. So it'll be interesting to see if Ohio State tries to make some move there. He'd be a natural fit for it. Obviously, Weston Zernetchel is out at USC as well, who was a longtime assistant with Mark Pantoni. But one of the problems Ohio State always runs into in this job, even though Mark Pantoni is no longer the director of player personnel and he's the general manager, is that there's a presumption or assumption that it's always Mark Pantoni's show. And so anybody who takes that job is in essence never going to be the real decision maker at Ohio State when it comes to player personnel decisions. So it's become kind of a revolving door and a moving sidewalk for people. But it's because Mark Pantoni's so good at it, and everyone wants to take guys who've been at Ohio State. In this instance with San Petito, he was bound to go back home to the Southeast at some point. So unfortunately, it happened a little faster than anybody wants. And again, not this time of the year is the real problem.
Yeah, but again, it's a bit like what you have when you have a great head coach or a great offensive coordinator. Like, you are going to be losing these staffers. They want to steal the secret sauce away. Other programs do. They want to hire those people. But as long as you keep the one at the top, whether that's Ryan Day and his offensive coordinators or offensive staffers or Mark Pantoni, like, that's the guy that you have to retain. So I'm not saying that losing San Petito doesn't sting. It does. It stung in the previous offseason and the offseason before that. You don't want to have to make these hires, especially a month before the season starts. But in some ways, it's also like a decent time to do it because training camp hasn't started. There's going to be a flood of people sending in their resumes to get an opportunity to work with Mark Pantoni to sell the brand of Ohio State. And then they know that it might only take a year and they can go run their own shop somewhere else or get a promotion or get a big raise from someone else who wants to hire someone from Ohio State. So I know that the argument is, well, Ohio State shouldn't be letting this happen year after year after year. If it's just a matter of 100,000 here or a couple 100,000, why can't they spend it? I mean, and until people stop wanting to work at Ohio State, until they start making bad hires, until the blueprint that's in place with Mark Pantoni stops working, it feels like Mark Pantoni knows what he's looking at to fill out his support staff. They're hiring very good people every year, and very good people want to work at Ohio State. So until that pipeline gets disrupted, I don't think that Ohio State has to adjust its budget to account for the desperation of others. And that's a point that I've made on the recruiting trail as well. But that also applies to the way that they've built out their staff. And I'm not saying that it's infallible and it's going to work forever, but it's not broken right now. And I don't feel like they need to pay a tax for LSU or USC wanting to raid their staff. That's just going to happen when you win at a very high level.
Well, and I also think it's important to be clear about what the role has actually been for Petito in the last year. It's ostensibly not that different than what Nick Murphy does at Ohio State. It's not that much different than what Parker Wareb does at Ohio State. The Buckeyes have other pieces there that are maybe less high profile names nationally, but the responsibility and the role has been pretty much the same because, again, Mark Pantoni as the general manager is the one making these decisions. And even as San Petito heads back to Louisiana, he's not going to be the guy who's the top dog there. Austin Thomas is the general manager there at LSU. So it's not, this is a lateral move to go close to home for San Petito. And it's hard to really get mad about it if you're an Ohio State fan. We've got to know Sam pretty well in the last year. He's a great guy, but he loves being from Louisiana and wants to go home. That's where his family is. That's where his daughter is. And so this seems like something that was pretty much destined to happen from the start. The belief when he was hired was that it was going to be a 1-year thing. And unfortunately, it took a little bit longer for it to be hashed out than people would have liked. But that's the way it was. So, but it wasn't the only recruiting loss of the weekend. The Buckeyes also did not land J.B. Shabazz, the offensive tackle from North Carolina. He went to Tennessee. They missed out on defensive end KJ Ford, who stuck with Florida despite some last-minute flirtations or using Alabama to raise his NIL dollars from the Gators. Not unexpected on either count. Frustrating without question because the Buckeyes continue to seem to be the team that is just boosting NIL dollars from other schools. That may be the case again this week. We'll talk about it more in the week, but Jaquaden Guilford, the 4-star wide receiver from Indiana, who Ohio State believed they were in the lead for a long time, is going to decide on Friday the 18th. It's going to still be Ohio State or Ole Miss. We'll see what happens. I think the Rebels are probably still the team to beat there. And it looks like Derek Cooper, the running back from Florida, who has not taken an official visit to Texas, and it had a reported final 3 of Ohio State, Miami, and Georgia, is now leaning towards Texas without ever taking an official visit there. And certainly that's not about money at all.
Oh, well said. What else could it possibly be about? Who knows?
It's not to say that there's not, Ohio State is they're trying to figure this out. And did you see all the stuff Friday about all the different NIL and house settlement BS? I mean, this is such a quagmire. Like, this is such a disaster that and everyone had to see it coming, but no one was prepared somehow.
I actually talked to some people at Ohio State about that going into the weekend. Sort of in response to that story, but also just trying to get a feel for how that was working and if it was working. We might have to dig into that a little bit later in the week because I was told that Ohio State submitted one deal just as a test to NIL Go to see what would happen. It was for $10,000. It was rejected. So that fits in line with what everyone else is saying, which is virtually 100% of these deals that are operating with collectives are being denied right now, and no one knows how that's going to work. It would though, Birm, if this is true, which it seems to be. And Ross Dellinger's been doing some awesome reporting about this and a bunch of other factors in NIL throughout the summer and coming out of Big 12 Media Days. Then Ohio State's approach is probably going to be proven to be correct again, to be patient, because it has not put all of its money in these NIL promises and collective promises without any clear understanding of how the rules, if there are going to be any, are going to be applied. But right now, the programs I don't know, just to pull them out of a hat, Texas Tech or USC, they're the ones that are going to be saying, oh my God, what are we going to do? We're not allowed to pay this.
Well, they're just going to continue to go to court and keep fighting it. And, again, I'm not sure which athletic director or head coach it was this weekend. I apologize. I only saw it in passing, mentioning this is heading towards a collective bargaining, and we're not going to stop it. They are employees. We can pretend all we want that they aren't, but they are at this point. And I know that there's not really an appetite for that amongst a lot of players, but that is where the sport has to go. And again, the sooner it gets there, the better, because all of this ugliness and confusion and back and forth between the rules being one thing for one team and one thing for another thing for a different team. Ohio State got rid of its collectives and put them all in-house for a reason, to say, hey, we are not going to use these groups. Other schools have said, screw that. We're going to do whatever the hell we want and try to stop us. So it was an interesting weekend on that front. We'll see what happens. But the Buckeyes firmly believe that their approach is going to be proven right. The question is how much crap has to happen before then for it to be proven right, and how far do you fall behind in the lead up to being proven right. So we'll see. A lot more to talk about.
Yeah, a lot of fun stuff to break down on a Monday. Kick things off on the beat on the Austin and Birm show. Thank you to everyone who's been filling up the inbox. I think that we probably should have had one of those like 6 years ago, Birm. So we're getting working towards a mailbag later in the week. We got a bunch of suggested topics that we can get into before Big Ten Media Days, which is now, we'll be 1 week away from heading out to Las Vegas to talk to Ryan Day, Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs, and Jeremiah Smith. So looking forward to that, and looking forward to a full week of content. What do you got, Birm?
I just want everyone to have a great Bastille Day, and find us one French listener.
Okay.
Find us someone in France. If
there are Buckeye fans in France. We know that.
Without question. If you're a Buckeye in France and you're watching or listening to this show, I need you to email the Austin and Birm show at gmail.com with your best recipe for a croissant. And I will make a croissant and send it to you personally.
They don't need you to if they have the recipe.
I want them to know
it won't stay fresh by the time it gets there.
I want them to know that I'm willing to. I want them to know that I'm willing to commit to putting in the time and effort to thank them for their support all the way over en français, and croissants are a great way to do it. So
I think you should just eat the croissant on the Austin and Birm show. On the beat.
When you were younger, did you eat a lot of Burger King breakfast sandwiches? Their croissants?
No, are you kidding me?
I mean, I'm not kidding. I ate a ton of those when I was a younger man. You get a croissant from Burger King, and the little Cinnamonis. That was like my high school breakfast every morning. A croissant from Burger King and Cinnamonis. It was clutch. Absolutely delightful breakfast. And I'm not anymore.
I'm way to start the day.
Well, I mean, I was in high school. I weighed like 108 pounds. I had to try to find some way to get me through the day. But nowadays, I don't ever go to Burger King for breakfast anymore, or if I can help it, ever at all. Although I have recently been like rediscovering the joy of the OCS from BK, and the original chicken sandwich still slaps. It's crazy, but it still slaps.
Sounds like you're fishing for a new sponsor on the beat. And
what, me? I mean, I just want you to have it your way, Austin. Because I think you rule.
Well, I think you rule, Birm, and I appreciate everyone hanging out with us on a Monday to start this week. I know the offseason is almost over. 47 days, Ohio State and Texas. You don't even need Ryan Day to remind you of the countdown. I've got it for you right here on 10 TV Plus, 97.1 The Fan. And anywhere that you want to take us on the go, you can download the audio only on all of the podcast platforms. Thanks again. He is Birm. I am Austin. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Au revoir.